Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're going to do the episode that I was supposed to do last Thursday, but didn't get home till late. Was really tired. I'd only been working a couple of days at the job, and I hadn't even had a chance really to listen to the album at that point. So I decided that I didn't want to give a half-ass assessment of it. So I didn't bother recording it, and I just waited until I was less tired, I guess, and then I listened to it, and now I'm doing the episode. So the band that we're talking about is 6x6. The album is Beyond the Shadowland, which was released on April the 26th. 2024, so not very long ago, like within the last week or so. 55 minutes in length, and on the the Inside Out label, sorry. So 55 minutes, maybe a couple of years ago would have been a lot for me, but now I've gotten to the point where 45 to 55 minutes is kind of normal for me, especially with the newer albums, stuff that's been released since the CDs and the new century and decade and all that stuff. So I've become more accustomed to the length of albums than I used to be back when I was a teenager in the 20s and 70s. In the 20s, in the 80s and 70s. So featured on this band are three musicians from other bands. In the past, when I was growing up, we would have called this a super band, but so many bands are doing this now. A guy plays with this band, he plays with that band, and they're all playing with different bands. I don't know if that term really applies so much anymore, but for today we'll just call it a super band. Featuring Robert Berry on lead vocals, bass, and keyboards. He's from the Greg Kiln band, which I have no history with at all. Ian Crichton on guitars from Saga, of course, so I am aware of him. And Nigel Glockler, I think that's how it's pronounced, Glockler, on drums, and he's from Saxon. So Saxon and Saga seemed kind of very different to me, so I was kind of intrigued when I saw this, and I said, okay, I wonder what this is going to sound like. It's not necessarily that it might be a mix of Saga and Saxon or the other guy's band. Sometimes those elements are there, and sometimes it often sounds completely different. I think there is, looks like, about 12, maybe 13 tracks on this album. Pretty solid album. There's about 4 or 5 tracks on here I really like a lot. So, and then there's like 2 or 3 that I don't like at all. So it's kind of a rangy album. So I'm listening to some tracks, and there's some aspects of some of the tracks that I like, but I don't like other aspects of it. So I was back and forth about 5 or 6 times with this album saying, yeah, I'm going to order it. And then, nah, I'm not going to bother. Then, yes, I am. And then, no, I'm not going to bother. So right now, I'm kind of sitting on the fence with it. I'm not sure whether I want to order it or not. Part of me wants to hear the sounds that I heard again from some of the songs. Other parts I don't want to hear. And then I'm thinking, how much is it going to cost, and whether it's worth it or not. So anyways, I may change my mind again. It's not like I don't do it regularly. That's why you got one, right? So you can change it. Okay, so the first 4 tracks on this are all about 5 minutes, and then you have a smaller song, and then a couple of more 4 to 5 minutes, about 4 more of those. And then you have one lengthy tune. It's about 8 minutes in length. So I'll try to break them down a bit. So the overall sound of this band is, vocalist is not terribly memorable. He's not a bad vocalist. Clear sounding, main, like not super high, not super low, kind of in the mid range. There's nothing odd about his voice in any way. It's just not really terribly memorable. There's no inflections of any kind that would make him stand out, but still pretty solid vocalist. The keyboards are pretty dominant at points on the album. Definitely the guitar is the main instrument here, I think. It's very for lack of a better term, it has a very Saga sounding feel to it, which shouldn't be surprising since that's who the guy came from. It does have that fast-paced kind of guitar sound that you get with Saga and Clippy as well. Yeah, pretty strong that way. I think there's a lot of really catchy hooks and riffs on this album. And then there's some songs that I just do nothing for me at all. So anyways, now we'll break them down a little bit here, just for interest's sake. So Ren is the opening track, about 5 minutes in length. Vocals are strong, clear, like I said, but not terribly memorable. Heavy up-tempo music with some distinctive instrumentation here, different sounds, and some I found the keyboards on this particular track pretty good and pretty interesting. The next track out is one of the better tracks. It's a track I like quite a bit. It's called Arms of a Word. Starts out with this kind of fast-paced, up-tempo song. Some pretty heavy, catchy riffs and hooks here. And even heavy by Saga standards. Like, it does have that Saga sound to it, but it's heavier. And the guitar solo is equally as heavy, I think. The vocals, again, not terribly memorable, but the music is really good. This is one of the better tracks. The next song is Can't Live Like This. It's got this kind of a little bit of a funky sound to it. I think it's the rhythm section giving that little kind of bass and drum funky sound to the music. It's not dominating by any stretch, but it kind of made me feel that way about it. Nice heavy catchy hook riff for the guitar. Vocals are a little bit more forward here, so you're hearing his voice a little clearer on this track than the previous tracks. But it's a bit poppy. It does have some narration in it where he's talking and telling a little bit of a story here. So there is a little bit of that going on. The next song out is called The Obelisk. This is a slower, more melodic sound. Very toned down. The solo is melodic as hell. Pretty good though. And the vocals, again, not terribly memorable. So these first 4 tracks I thought were all pretty decent or good. Nothing really bad. Then you get your first song, and I really didn't like it all. It's a short song, about almost 3 minutes. It's called Only You Can Decide. It's more of a ballad-like song, and most people know that I'm not a huge fan of ballads. I don't really care for them too much. There are some that I do, but this is not one of them. The vocals on this track are a little more upright, up front than some of the other tracks as well. And that may be a consequence of it being more of a ballad, so there's less instrumentation than you would normally get on some of their other tracks. And they tend to be a little bit on the heavy side at times, so that heaviness may push the vocals back, but there's none of that on this song. The next song is called Titans. I thought the opening on this was great, electronic opening with some really heavy guitar riffing, nice catchy hook, nice catchy beat. And the vocals are strong here. One of his better vocal songs, I think. Just has a really catchy hook, really catchy beat to it. Just a fantastic song. I think it's probably my favorite on the album, but it's close to some of the other songs that I like quite a bit, but I think I like this one the best. And then you have Outside Looking In, which is the next track. It's about 4 minutes or so, almost 5 minutes in length. Another vocal guitar dominated song. They have a few of those going on. It's kind of almost a heavy pop song, I think. I wouldn't call this a heavy metal song or even a hard rock song. It does have a little bit of that heaviness to it, but I think it's more like a power pop. Maybe you might want to go with that. I didn't find that to be such a great tune. It was almost very unmemorable. So this is one of the weaker songs on the album too. So that's like the first 7, and then you've got 4 more. So there's actually 11 on this album. The next track, which is called Spectre, heavy guitar riff. Yeah, I would say this is one of the overall pretty. I think it's probably overall the heaviest track on the album. Some really strong vocals. I think the drums are the best. Best drumming is on this particular track. It's more memorable. It almost has a metal-like sound to the guitar solo as well. So a pretty strong track. Definitely one of the 3 or 4 best, I think, on the album. I liked it quite a bit. The next song is called Synthesize. Heavy track, fast-paced. Solo is lots of shredding on this solo. The bass is very forward here. It kind of dominates the beginning. But for some reason, even though there's a lot of good elements going on in this song, I just didn't find it really catchy in any way that would make me want to listen to it all the time. The next track is the longest track on the album, and I thought it might be the proggiest track because there's not a ton of prog here. There is some prog. Maybe more than some. Maybe it's a little bit like 50-50 with that and the hard stuff and the odd stuff that they put in. But I thought this being the longest song would be the most proggy. I didn't really find it, even though it was a little more proggy than some of the other stuff, I just didn't find it a very interesting track. It was one of the weaker tracks as well. The keyboard opening is catchy, yes, I agree with that. Heavy rhythm section. The vocals I've gained are not terribly memorable. There's nothing really strong about them or weak about them. They're just not terribly memorable stuff, right? The last track on the album, so the one step and the synthesize, the second last and the third last track were really great, and I thought, okay, so I'm kind of wearing on this album a bit, so maybe that's part of the reason why I'm not liking it, or maybe they're just fading out. But then they come back with A Mission, which is a pretty strong song. Heavy guitar hook, heavy rhythm section, fast-paced, some heavy, beefy, almost dominating synthesizer parts here. The solo sounds very like Saga or something that you would find from the 80s. Definitely have that cut sound to it. So this is the song of all of the tracks on the album. This is the one that most reminded me or brought me back to Saga. I thought there was a lot of that here. If you like that 80s kind of, like The Flyer is a good song from Saga. It's kind of like that, but maybe a little bit heavier. So I thought this was one of the better tracks, and it was a nice way for them to end the album on a positive note. So again, about 6 tracks. So 11 tracks. I'd say about 5, maybe 6 of them are really good. There's a couple that are maybe indiscriminate. I don't really care for them too much. And then there's like maybe 2 or 3 that I didn't like at all. So yeah, I'm still on the fence about whether to get it or not. Part of me thinks that if you liked 6 songs initially and you listen to it more, maybe 2 or 3 more of them will come along and then it'll be worth having it. But it just depends on how much they want to charge me for it and how much it's going to cost me to have it delivered, because I can't buy it in a store. I have to kind of order it online from the group's page. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of What's New, featuring 6x6 Beyond the Shadowland. By the way, the album cover is fantastic. It's a pair of red dice with the 6x6 written on it. It's got a nice aeroplane, kind of a Sopwith camel type airplane flying in front of these really peaky looking mountains. And definitely a band that's worth checking out. If I can find the link to it, I will put that in the link description below so that you can access the album. I'm starting to learn this stuff too, which is good. So there you have it. That's it for What's New. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please hit like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. Any comments about the album or anything, you can put that in the comment section below. I try to deal with things as best I can when I get comments that need me to pay attention a little more. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, and we will be back next week with another episode of What's New. Take care.